Corner.net. You're watching the Fact Project here on the DJ Tiger channel. Shout out to DJ Tiger. FACT, of course, is an acronym that stands for Fundamental African-Centered Thought. The goal here on the Fact Project is to convey some facts and some information to members of our community. As usual, I have joining me educator, author, activist, and creator of Harlem Liberation School, Brother Agyei Tyehimba. Peace, Brother Agyei. Thank you for joining us today, brother.
Peace. Good to be here, brother.
Yeah, I think today I'm gonna do maybe a shorter version. We normally do an hour, but I might have to do a little bit of a shorter version today. But we'll see what we can get done. Either way, you are the creator of Harlem Liberation School, and I want to talk today about boycotts. Do boycotts really work? There are a few things that I want to touch on before we get to the subject of boycotts. You did a video recently it's saying people of color need to respect the struggle of Black people here in America. What can you tell us about that video?
Yeah. Basically, it comes from conversations I had with many of my quote unquote comrades, my wife, my queen, and other people who are kind of feeling like so-called people of color. And I'm going to name Latinos, some of them Arabs, some of them Asian people, some of them have a kind of a disrespect and scorn for and very dismissive of Black people. And some of them even have actually anti-Black hostility and prejudices. Meanwhile, your ability to eat and feed your family, go to school, get on buses and take public transportation, even get civil service jobs, much of that comes from the very deliberate work of Black people, the same people that they scorn. So this was a way of saying, that has to get addressed. And I'm not on some, obviously, I'm on that FBA stuff. But so anybody who's mistaken it, it's not that. People need to know who their mothers and fathers are in this struggle. And that's just what it is. People can take that offensively, but that's what it is. Right? And the scriptures say, honor your mother and father that your days may be long upon the earth. So there's a connection, the degree to which you hold your parents in high regard and the quality and experiences of your life are connected. There's no way around that. So I had to address that.
Okay, now when you say the struggles of Black people in America, are we talking about the civil rights movement, the Black Power movement? What does that mean exactly?
All the way from when we were first here, that record of resistance, all the way up through the abolitionist movement, the convention movement, the Black socialist, communist, although that was short-lived movements, civil rights movement, Black Power, Black arts, all of those things. Because those are things, look, Civil War, Reconstruction. Our work, the Reconstruction Amendments 13, 14, and 15, were created because of us, because of the work we did. 13th Amendment supposedly ended formal chattel slavery, replaced it with prison, of course. The 14th Amendment granted citizenship rights to people who were in this country and to people born in the country. You couldn't take away our life, liberty, or property without due process, which means you got to go to court, you get to defend yourself. And the 15th Amendment gave at least Black men the right to vote. Women didn't get the right to vote until about 1920 with the 19th Amendment, right? So all those three things right there affects every person of color that comes to this country, right? Just if you just take those three amendments that we basically created, and then you add on the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the Housing Rights Act. Man, come on.
Yeah.
That covers everything that people of color would have to experience. And so it's ironic that we tend to be the people held with great scorn, as opposed to the people that are held with great reverence.
Now, you mentioned the Civil Rights Act. I think it's interesting that Title IX of the Civil Rights Act creates a provision for women. So they kind of found a backdoor way of putting other groups into the fold as it relates to the Civil Rights Act. Are you familiar with Title IX of the Civil Rights Act?
Is this the one that gives them equal not equal pay, that opens up equal funding
Yes.
for things like sports and stuff like that for women?
Not only that, it kind of puts women, and especially in particular white women, in the category under the umbrella of minority, so
Yeah.
that they can reap some of the benefits that are supposed to be set aside for us. You
Yeah.
familiar with
I
you
mean,
familiar with Thailand? Okay, okay. Without going in depth,
that's to be expected.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's an example of what you're referencing, though. Like the work that we did, other people came in the back door, and now they benefit. And sometimes it's not people of color, quote unquote. And especially in that case. Now you
And Brother Rollo,
yeah,
just real quick,
yeah,
also people should understand when you talk about Latino studies, women's studies, gay studies, all of that, and those movements that created them come off the heels of witnessing our tremendous organizing work around Black studies, Africana studies. We were the first that we created that discipline in this
yeah,
country, and
yeah.
other people saw it and said, wow, and benefited. So, any way you look at it, I'm not going to get into the music and the cultural stuff. That's a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, now I'm glad you mentioned Black studies and women's studies and those kind of studies. This is coming from student protests and student activism on college campuses. We don't see that anymore nowadays. Why do you think that is?
That's an interesting question. I think that a lot of I think it has to do with our ideological foundations. Back in the 60s and then in the 80s, when my generation of college, those two generations were nationalists, man. They were nationalists and Pan-Africanists, straight like that. So naturally, their agendas would be different, their interests are different, the things they're demanding, the types of social events. This group of I don't know if we would call them Gen Zers. Yes, the Gen Z crew. They have more of a multicultural ideological framework. So their thing is, man, stop beating up on the LGBT community. They're people too, which is true, granted, but they tend to be very defensive of and protective of other people, their sexuality, their body image. Don't you shame that sister because she's obese. Like they're very big on that. But what they're not big on is protecting Black people's identity and Black people's survival. And that's been carefully curated by our enemies. Again, that's a whole nother show. But that's been curated by our enemies so that they would be that way. So that a young person that's 20 that's Black, female or male, might hear people say an offensive word in the LGBT community, and they will get very, hey, unk, you can't say that, man. Come on, that's that old school. You an old head. You can't do that. But they'll say nigga, nigga, nigga all day and
Right.
don't see the contradiction.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good point. You had brother Knowledge Born, and shout out to Hassan Burton in the chat. He wants to give a shout out to the nation of gods and earth. But you had brother Knowledge Born on the Harlem Liberation School to talk about the power of the Black family. Now, this is something I touched on in my book. I said the Black community is in disarray because the Black family is in disarray. And, the Black community is dealing with a lot of the challenges that it deals with because the family is, what the family is right now as it relates to the Black family. It's in disarray, as I said. So what can you share with us about the conversation you had with Knowledge Born on the power of the Black family?
Yeah, well, definitely shout out to the gods and the earth. Shout out to my brother Knowledge Born. Shout out to Father Allah. Um, I Our discussion was primarily around promoting his ebook series, Voices of the Diaspora. And I think the last component in that series was the piece on the Black family. So the larger thing was, man, to get as many people to buy his books because every one of them is really beautiful. First of all, literally beautiful to look at. Put a lot of work in, very factual. It has really good information and it's interactive. Just what we were talking about before the show, having this kind of multimedia way of presenting information to a people, unfortunately, who have short attention spans and aren't necessarily turned on by discussions of black family and history and sociality and politics. So it's really to promote his work. Um, I have much respect for Brother Nas Brown. He's been at it for several decades. I consider him a comrade in the struggle. Comrade, yeah. Um, and so he was talking about the black family as the foundational unit of the nation. And it's interesting that the reason that we're in disarray is because of white supremacy, right? In every respect. And things like the decay of the black family, the dissolving of our black male female relationships, and I can go on and on. The distrust and the cynicism we have with each other, those are symptoms of white supremacy, but they're not the causes. They're the symptoms of white supremacy. You teach people they are nothing, have nothing, and can be nothing. Teach them that, oh, you shouldn't want to educate yourself. You should hate on the people in your community that's educated, that have vocabulary, that are socially conscious. You should hate on them. You should ostracize them. You should be afraid of them. Well, naturally, you ain't going to produce. The goal is not to produce scholars and intellectuals in your tradition. What you should do is be out here opening them legs, getting your gyrations on, doing twerking. You see, so that's what they do. So the things that we see as negative are all symptoms tied back to white supremacy, as the late great Neely Fuller Jr. told us.
Yeah, because I said the disintegration of the black community begins with the disintegration of the black family. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, you know me, brother. I'm a little nuanced. So my thing would be it begins with white supremacy. That the black all those other things are corollaries of that major piece. People understand that, they get it. So you might see all these different things that we don't like, but they're symptoms. They're not the causes. They're symptoms of white supremacist oppression.
All right, so we gotta and before I go to the next question, because we got a question in the chat, the great Dr. John Henry Clark said that enslavement was not only war on black culture, but it was also war on the black family. And I think that's something that we need to understand. The great Dr. Francis Cress Welsing said that racism is war on black people, and that war it takes many shapes and forms. And so the breakup and the disintegration of the black family is only a facet of that war. Do you agree with the great Dr. John Henry Clark when he says that enslavement was not only war on black culture, African culture, but war on the African family?
Yeah, and in fact, it's almost saying the same thing, because anybody that understands black culture knows you can't talk about black culture and not talk about the family. So they're kind of inseparable.
Yeah.
You know, if you think of it that way. Culture is everything, your way of life, the way you think, your views, your values, your priorities. And that goes through your family. Whether you're just one single person, all your biological family's dead, that's still a family issue, because that person learned things from their family when they were alive. They got habits, right? And customs and ideas from them. So yeah, absolutely. I agree with that.
Okay, so we got BB Rodriguez in the chat says, Master Teacher Agyei Tyehimba, can you please explain why flat blackness and the 14th Amendment has been falsely piggybacked along with by all other groups to detriment of Black American people? I'm not clear on the question. Do you understand what that means?
Not exactly. Let me say this to the sister. I do not consider myself a master teacher, but I humbly I feel good to hear you say that to me. I appreciate that. Um, the 14th Amendment is tricky. The 14th Amendment was created by white people, right? In the Congress, the radical Republicans. Remember, Republican Party at that time was pro-black. It's not the Republican Party we know today. This is why people like Dr. King and all of them were Republican. That shift didn't occur until the late 60s. That's another show for another time. The 14th Amendment was supposed to protect us as citizens, acknowledge us as citizens, and make sure that our rights as citizens were enforced. Because remember, at that point, we are the descendants, we're slaves, the descendants of enslaved people. We're freedmen, they called it, right? That was snatched from Africa and brought here to work, right? So, but the problem with it is, I think the system may be getting to, nobody asked us if we wanted to be citizens. Nobody said, would you formerly enslaved people that we took from your motherland, disconnect you from the culture? Would you like to be American citizens? Because if so, we're prepared to do this whole amendment to protect your rights here. If not, then we need to have a referendum to see where people sit. And we should have been given the option to say, nah, I don't want to be down with America. We want our own nation, or we want to return to Africa, or whatever.
Right.
This thing would be picked up time and time again during the Black Power movement. So people from the Republic of New Africa hit on that. Revolutionary Action Movement hit on that. Brother Malcolm's OAAU hit on that. Right? This idea that hey, that's not that 14th Amendment didn't resolve many of the issues. And in fact, to build again on what the sister says, I'm going to hit this and quit it. The thing people don't understand with legislation is it does not manifest immediately. They're words on paper and they're ideas which are invisible. They have to be enforced. They have to be protected. So if you take the Brown versus Board of desegregation decision, which I believe was 1955, 54, right?
54, 1954.
Now 1963 is a march on Washington. Some of those speakers are still talking about segregation in the public schools, right? It takes a while for that stuff to translate, especially when the people that wrote it don't really want to enforce those rights.
Right.
So the other thing is that the 14th Amendment may have on paper said that we're citizens, but we were never treated as citizens. And a historian like myself would argue only 12 years in this country's history, which is 5% of its history, considering that the country's about 249 years old. 5% of this country's existence were Black people given a level playing field and empowered and protected to be. And those are the 12 years of the Reconstruction period, right? And that period didn't last, 12 years? Because the white man made a compromise from the North with the South so that they could get the Southerners wanted their way of life back. They wanted rule. They wanted to get the Union troops out of the South, right? Because the Union troops in the South patrolling the white crackers to make sure that they weren't supposedly oppressive to these newly freed Africans or African Americans. So once they said they had a thing where they wanted their president, Hayes, Rutherford B. Hayes, to be the president, right? And the Southern people had a guy named Tilden running for president. They said, look, we'll give you the election, get your man to be president, but you got to get your ass out of the South and let us run it. So once that happened, the Hayes-Tilden Compromise in 1877, it was all over. As soon as they agreed, the white man, the Union Army left the South, and them crackers installed black codes, which came to be known in the 50s and 60s as what? Jim Crow laws. Same difference. Whites here, blacks there. You can't get on the bus. You can't do this. You can only work certain jobs. So yeah, if you think of it that way, my sister, very important point. That 14th Amendment is very critical, and it's a major loophole for those who are so inclined to push for. We talk about nationhood. Look, no other people has our story. Were brought from their motherland, enslaved here on this soil, helped build this country on this soil, right? Then fought for the rights that we got. Those rights were compromised with some tricky language and some back doors, as Brother Rollo said. We're going to get rid of chattel slavery. We're going to replace it with mass prison. And it's written right in the thing. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude shall be accepted unless in the case of boom, you're arrested and you're a felon or you're guilty of crime. So yeah, so that 14th Amendment, the sister Ava DuVernay did a brilliant documentary called 13th Amendment. But somebody need to do that documentary called 14th Amendment.
Mm.
Because I think that that's where the discussion of our nationhood and sovereignty comes into play.
Interesting,
That
interesting.
we have
So
a right to say I don't want to be American.
okay, and I'm glad you said that. And we're coming to the topic of boycotts in a few minutes. But Sounds of Saint Elsewhere said that's the fundamental point that the new African independent movement makes, that U.S. citizenship was a colonial imposition. You want to respond to that?
Nothing to say but sure you're right.
Right.
As Brother Barry White would have said, that's exactly what I explained. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah. So I would remix those words and say that U.S. citizenship is a facet and a component of the system of structural racism, which is basically based on the myth of white supremacy. So I want to now go over into the topic of boycott. I know here on the Fact Project, we were engaged in a boycott against Netflix for more than a year. And it was Clear Airways Project, CMOTAP, any number of other groups across the country engaged in a boycott against Netflix because of their stereotypical and deplorable betray of, of Black people in the animated reboot of Good Times. And so the call was for people to cancel their Netflix. And a lot of people across the country did that. Brother Agyei, you were involved with the campaign as it relates to a video that you put out promoting the campaign. And that was very effective. We called Netflix, we wrote letters, and the call was to boycott. Brother Agyei, I had so many people in the chat, on the chat as I'm live, or even the pre-recorded version that appears on YouTube, that said, you're wasting your time boycotting. Boycotting is not going to work. And, people kind of have that throw in the towel mentality. And I think because of psychological warfare, we've been so mentally defeated that we psychologically give up and throw the fight before we even try. What are your thoughts on this idea that people would say that a boycott is not going to work? I know you would never try to convince them that it is, but what would you say to those people that might say, hey, boycotting doesn't work and it's not going to change anything?
I'm actually empathetic to such people because I understand why they take that position, even though I fundamentally disagree with it. I have always been a supporter of Black resistance, and I will continue to be since I was 13 years old. The fact of the matter is that when we resist our oppression, a few things happen. We embolden our people. We give them confidence. We show them that that the white man is not all seeing and all knowing, that he can be defeated too.
Right.
We also stand a chance to get some concessions from that resistance, right? So that's the first thing. A boycott is a form of resistance. It's a form of protest where you selectively decide that we're going to withdraw our support, many times our economic support from a said business or establishment, or it could be an organization. It's not always an economic boycott, right? So in this case, in a way, the Netflix piece was kind of economic, but it's also saying don't support them at all because of the imagery and the messaging they put forth, right? Okay, so my thing is this: let the agitators agitate. Let the protesters protest. Encourage them to whatever degree you can. Support them. But if you're of the mindset that, as a nationalist and a Pan Africanist would be, that ultimately that's their shit, that's their company, this is their country, yes, there's going to be contradictions like that. Things they do that annoy us, things they do that we find oppressive. That's the nature of our relationship with white people in this country. Remember how we got here, family, and
Yeah.
who brought us here.
Right.
Right? So we have to understand that. But I always support resistance, even when I disagree that it will be effective. Boycotts can be very effective. The thing with a boycott, though, is you have to have a significant number of people rallying behind whatever the said action is.
Yeah.
That's difficult to do, family, because things like Walmart, Target, this is where we get a lot of our deals from. Black people are practical. So, yeah, they're going to get their deals. They got families, they get food there. These places that sell everything, you got discounts, you got variety. You know, Amazon, people who are disabled can't get up and go, they can order it to their door. So it shows you our vulnerabilities of people, is what I'm trying to say. We're vulnerable. So when you go to the average black person, say, turn off Netflix, and they don't say, man, they had the Mike Tyson white boy fight.
Right.
Man, they got a Kevin Hart's movie. Man, they got, you see, so you put black people, it's difficult for most black people to say, I love these shows, but I'm gonna put my politics, over my passion, over my entertainment taste. So boycotts can get very tricky, and you have to be, for them to work, you have to be very skilled at communicating the point and getting people to see the urgency. That's why the Montgomery bus boycott was so very important and so successful. But remember, that was just a city
Right.
in a state. Now you talking about a nationwide internet, that is difficult to amass the level of support you need. But nevertheless, I would never say, I would never try to deflate people who are involved in any type of black resistance against white supremacy just because I may see it different now. Go ahead. And if I can support them, I'm going to support it. So as you said, in this case, I wasn't out there, but we made sure we did a few, maybe 2 short videos, just getting information out and getting you in touch with CMOTAP that was organizing it. So I would never uh, disrespect the activists. I started out as an activist, and I'm still an activist.
I had somebody in the chat on one of the videos said that he's not going to cancel his Netflix because it's cheap entertainment. When you get those kind of people, unfortunately, that's some of the responses that you get. And there are some people that you can't reach. Some people would rather be entertained than to actually be free. And so I think, that was one of those people. But that's some of the responses that you get. Now, I will say this. We engaged in the boycott for a year, and Netflix was slated to release the second season of Good Times in April. It's now July, and they didn't put it out. They have officially canceled it. And so I'm saying that to say that a boycott can be effective if people engage in it, which is what you said. And Huey P. Newton always said, revolution requires participation. And a lot of people are not willing to participate in the very revolution that they would need to transform the condition of their lives, because they think the system is too big, it's too elaborate. And like I said, people are so psychologically beat down that they're already defeated before they even get in the fight. And so that to say that boycotting actually does work. I followed the Netflix stock price. It even dipped at some point. Jamal Bryant, who was out of the black church in the state of Georgia, he launched a campaign against Target. You mentioned Target in what you just said, because they're rolling back their DEI. I say DIE because DIE spells die, right? You don't want to die. You want life. LIFE, liberation, independence, freedom, and empowerment. Shout out to Brother Shamari. But a lot of people were saying, hey, you know what? I can't do that. I have to shop at Target. Like people are so stuck in certain things. But either way, a lot of people did engage in the boycotting against Target. Target sales dropped. Target stock price went down to the point where Target actually reached out to the black church to try to make a deal. Now, before we come to that, we're on the subject of boycott. I want to make sure everybody's clear about what a boycott is. Just stay with me for a second.
What is a boycott in consumer activism? Have you ever thought about how your shopping choices can make a difference? Today, we are going to talk about boycotts in consumer activism and how they fit into economic anthropology. A boycott is when people decide not to buy or use a product or service to protest against something they believe is wrong. This is a powerful way for consumers to express their opinions and push for change. In consumer activism, a boycott is a key strategy. It is a voluntary and nonviolent action taken by individuals or groups who want to influence companies or organizations. When consumers unite to stop supporting a brand, it sends a clear message about their dissatisfaction with that brand's practices. This can be in response to issues like unfair labor practices, environmental harm, or unethical business behavior. From the perspective of economic anthropology, boycotts show how our consumption patterns are shaped by social norms and political beliefs. When people choose to boycott, they are not just making economic decisions. They are also expressing their cultural and ethical values. This means that what we buy and what we refuse to buy can reflect our beliefs about justice, equality, and responsibility. Boycotts can have real economic impacts. When a large number of consumers stop buying from a company, it can lead to financial losses and damage to the company's reputation. For example, if a brand is accused of using child labor, consumers may choose to boycott that brand. This collective action can force the company to change its policies or practices in order to regain public support. Moreover, boycotts often align with broader social movements. They can help raise awareness about important issues and encourage others to think critically about their consumption habits. By participating in a boycott, consumers can feel empowered to make a difference in the world around them. In summary, a boycott in consumer activism is a way for individuals to use their purchasing power to stand up against perceived injustices. It illustrates the connection between economic choices and cultural values, highlighting how consumer behavior is influenced by social and political factors. Understanding boycotts helps us see how our choices can contribute to larger social changes.
Okay, so Brother Agyei, they said in there boycott, and they linked it with this concept of consumer activism. Activism, the root of the word activism is act, right? Act is to do something. You think when the subject of boycott comes up, a lot of Black people do not want to engage in it because they would actually have to do something? Is it like, it doesn't appeal to their laziness? Like, why would you think some people would not want to engage in the activism?
I think Black people, or that segment of Black people who would not want to participate in a boycott, I think that's more speaks to their ignorance. Black people are some hardworking people, even those whose politics I disagree with. They're hustling. They may be working illegally or unethically sometimes, but they're constantly on the grind. We are grinding, hustling people. I think that's a problem of their ignorance. They don't know the history of boycotts. So, for instance, way before the Netflix boycott, there was a Montgomery bus boycott. Way before the Montgomery bus boycott, maybe 20 years before that, the great Adam Clayton Powell Jr. right here in Harlem organized a bus boycott in Harlem, right? So and also organized a don't a buy black campaign on 125th Street and had Black people say, "Don't shop where you can't work," way before the civil rights movement. So this is a history. If they don't know the history, then they may not know, oh, our people have used this particular form of protest successfully, and we got some concessions. The reason why there's Black and brown and Asian and Arab professors in the CUNY college system is because of Adam Clayton Powell too, who put pressure, organized Black people to put pressure on the CUNY system. So I think it's more a function of ignorance and fear. Some people are afraid if they get involved in such things, they will lose their jobs. They'll be in the paper. Somebody will be telling on them. They'll lose their paper. So I think there's a few factors to that, which is why the political education, effective communication to people. This is what this is doing. This is why we're doing this. But also, let me say this quickly. Boycotts are good, but they're even better when they're not the only form of protest going on, right? So if you think about it, a boycott is just one form of protest. During the civil rights movement, you had boycott. You also had people who were calling for the army to protect us. You also had the Deacons for Self-Defense and people like that who were providing our own protection. What am I saying here? I'm saying don't rely just on protesting white folk. This is coming from a person who's been involved in protesting white folk for a long time. And I mean literally in their face. Don't rely on that only. You have to also, who's going to build our schools? Who's going to build our hospitals? Who's going to provide our emergency rescue evacuation services? Who's going to make sure that we have air conditioned facilities? Who's going to make sure we're building homes, physically building homes and structures? So while we're fighting, we have to be building at the same time till we get to a place where we don't give a damn about what they're showing because we have our own television network, media network, all of that. So it's really you fight and you're building. You're building and you're fighting. And if any of them is done without the other, even when successful, the success will be limited. I have to do both at the same time.
So you're saying boycotting is one strategy among many?
Yes, and I'm further saying it cannot be the only strategy we're engaging in.
Exactly.
That it has to be paired with strategies that build. So for instance, if we're telling people don't shop at this store, cool. Tell them why, whatever, and then tell them this is where you can shop. These are the places you should go that are black owned. And then have a contingency of people with money who giving out money to everything under the sun. Say, yo, LeBron, Oprah, how about some money to build some supermarkets, some department stores, right? So that's what I'm saying. It's multi-layered that you get. Don't just tell people what not to do. Point them to the direction of what they should do, right? Just like a parent, don't you don't you go out there on them corner with them boys. Okay, cool. Where should they go? Because if you don't have something for them to do, then they're gonna inevitably be on the corner with them boys.
Right. Right. So I think a lot of people don't understand the power of the black dollar. It's safe to say that a lot of businesses that go by profit and loss, the black dollar sometimes is the difference between profit and loss. And I think a lot of black people don't understand that. So they don't understand the power that they have in terms of their dollar. And I say, a lot of people say, hey, well, you have to vote. And, voting is the end all and be all. But I say, and voting, I guess, is like what you say, it's a strategy, right? But the way you spend your money or don't spend your money is also equally as powerful as voting, in my humble opinion. And I feel like a lot of people don't understand it. Do you think people are not getting that? Like they don't understand the power of the black dollar?
I think that black people are the victims of miseducation. Everything that we need to know to live abundantly, peacefully, and in harmony has deliberately been kept from us. And everything we need to know to kill ourselves, to die prematurely, to be broke and homeless and ignorant has been plentifully supplied, right? So, going back to my experience, growing up in Harlem, my mother had to go all the way from 143rd Street to like 75th Street to shop for food. Why? Because it was the white supermarkets. They had quality food, they had good prices. We couldn't get that in the neighborhood, right where we lived. My mother and father figured that the best education was to go to this Catholic school downtown on 75th Street because, in their estimation, the schools in the neighborhood was subpar and wouldn't get me the academic foundation I needed. Not in our community. We had to go way downtown. Now, juxtapose that with this fact. If I wanted to get prostitutes, illegal guns, cocaine, or heroin, I could get that right on my block.
Mm.
I could walk in any 5 block direction and get that easily. That I'm saying this to show you that these things are socially conditioned, right? That the things we need for empowerment are we're deprived generally. You got to go way on some damn NASA mission to get it.
Yeah.
The
Right.
stuff you need in your hood, man, is deprived of those things. So yeah.
Now, brother Agyei, I got a special treat. I got Brother Agyei Hamilton of the Watts Prophets on the phone. You familiar with Brother Agyei and the Watts Prophets?
I'm not familiar.
Okay, so Watts Prophets was like the first version of what we call the Last Poets here on the East Coast. They were out there on the West Coast. Peace, Brother Agyei. Can you hear me, brother?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Brother Agyei, can you hear him well?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds kind of low, so we're going to do our best. Brother Agyei, before we come to Watts Prophets, we're talking about the concept of boycotts. Now, you came up during a time where it was civil rights movement, Black Power movement, all of those movements were going on. How important was boycotting in that time period, in your opinion? How important was the boycott?
Well, it hasn't worked for us to have nothing. We just did it over and over again. It seemed like we responded to every crisis in that manner. It hasn't, to me, been successful.
But can it be successful is the question.
It probably could if we work together. Anything that we wish to do can be successful.
Okay, and I mentioned the power of the black dollar. I say a lot of black consumers don't understand how powerful their dollar is. Do you agree with that?
Everything that we're dealing with is powerful. Money, food, clothing, shelter, survival, period, is very important.
Yeah. So that I agree. I agree with that 100%. And Brother Agyei talked about the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 and how that was in one single city. And that actually transformed the condition of the people in that city because they rallied around the concept and they engaged in a boycott. Do you think that boycott was successful because the people worked together in one accord?
Anytime we work together, we're successful. We survived. We wouldn't have survived to this point if we hadn't sometimes worked together on some things. But it was what we're working together for. Working together for integration wasn't a good idea when integration is a disintegration of those being integrated. And I think we have learned that, those of us who didn't want to sit on the toilet side of white people, we wanted our own toilets. We were a different bunch.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So now, Brother Agyei, you were involved with the Watts Prophets, and you were hip hop before there was an expression called hip hop. And Brother Agyei, if you have a question for Brother Agyei, please by all means chime in because he's here for us to answer questions.
First of all, I don't know anything about hip hop. Our first album in 1969 was called Rapping Black in a White World. Rap had a baby called hip hop. Not hip hop had a baby called rap. I don't know anything about hip hop. I've been rapping. Rapping is evidently, people don't know the Watts Prophets history. We made the first album on earth called Rap. That's where the music industry got the name rap music. There was no such a hip-hop is a culture. Rap is a fine art form. Wherever there was jazz, there was rap. Rap started during slavery. When we came here, there was, if you came from Ghana, it was at least 49 languages. And if you came from West Africa, the Bantu-based African languages were at least 400 or more. And so when we came to America, we were very confused on the plantations. We had all of these languages to deal with. And that's where rap began to evolve in an African cultural style. We began to take all of these languages, and we begin to take common denominator words from these languages, such as maybe gumbo. Gumbo was prevalent in all of the 400 languages straight across Africa. So we begin to take these words, the field brothers, not the ones in the house. We begin to take these words, and we started an ever-evolving language, a fine art form called rap. And it wasn't called rap then. It was just the field brothers learning to talk to each other, and it had to have deceit in it from the very beginning. When we begin to, this new language begin to evolve, such as when a brother says, that's bad, man, and he mean that's good. That was the beginning of rap. It began to have stuff like that. But it was in the fields, not in the house, brothers and sisters. So it evolved, and it didn't show itself to the academic world until a poet by the name of Paul Laurence Dunbar came along. And when Paul Laurence Dunbar came along, they called it dialect. But the linguists knew this was a new, ever-evolving language. And what I mean by ever-evolving, my generation called a house a pad, the next one called it a crib, and then you guys call it a spot or whatever you call it now. And it continued to evolve. And they didn't want to hear his contemporary poetry. They wanted to hear his rap-like poetry. If you go listen or learn who Paul Laurence Dunbar was. But it began to evolve wherever there was jazz. Wherever there was jazz, there was that hip talk. J. Edgar Hoover actually had the jazz musicians investigated because he thought they were speaking another language, and they were. And it was evolved into a thing called rap. In the academic world, it evolved into a thing called ebonics. It evolved with people like Paul Laurence Dunbar. Baraka would beat on tables and stuff and do his poetry with beats and stuff like that. Paul Laurence Dunbar and Charlie Mingus made an album. Not Paul Laurence Dunbar, Langston Hughes. And Mingus made an album of jazz out of Watts when Mingus was living in Watts. So that's how rap evolved. And all of the definitions that I've heard that people have and all of that, to us, lived on the west coast of America, coming out of New Orleans, Texas. The word rap, I'm 86 years old, and I've been using that word since I was 8 years old because it was a part of our everyday life. Let me rap to you, brother, like I'm rapping to y'all right now. And it was a part of all of our music. Barry White, who is also from Watts, you wouldn't think he was rapping. But if you listen to the beginning of his songs, he did a rap just before he did most of his songs. Lou Rawls used to rap on some of his songs. Rap was a part of all of our music. Gospel, you can hear rapping in gospel. You can hear it in blues. You can hear it in, it was an ever-evolving language. What was her name? Zora Neale Hurston. She said it was an ever-evolving language. Many of our scholars realized it was, and it was recognized in the academic world, as I said, as Ebonics. But in the streets, it was always called rap.
Okay, brother Ante, hold fast for a minute, because I do want to come back to that subject.
Well, I just wanted to tell y'all that because you probably don't know who the Watts Prophets was. I just heard you guys say that, and we was here since 1967.
Yeah. No, I'm familiar with the Watts Prophets. Rapping Black in the White World. What is a man? I'm familiar with the Watts Prophets. You want, brother Amde, you want to stay on so we could talk about boycotts, or you want to
Yeah, well, I don't know anything about boycotts. I saw them. I didn't participate in most of those kind of things. Okay. I was a poet.
Okay. So you want to stay on, or you want me to call you back?
No. I stay on. I'd love to hear you all's conversation.
Okay. So hold fast, if you would. Just stay on. You could listen. Okay, brother Agyei, I'm back with you now. We talked about, or we heard recently about the boycott that was launched by Jamal Bryant out of Atlanta, Georgia. Target Fast. What are you familiar with the Target Fast, brother Agyei? Can you speak to that?
No, I'm not, bro.
All right. So brother Agyei, you on mute, brother. Brother Agyei, you on mute, brother.
Hello.
Yeah, I'm with you. Hold on.
But if you tell me,
Essentially, Jamal Bryant called for a boycott. He termed it as a fast because it was to coincide with Lent, the Christian sort of thing where they stop eating or pledge to eat a certain food in preparation for Easter. So he called it a fast, but technically it's a boycott. Very admirable, smart, given his position and his flock, so to speak. So yeah, can't.
I'm on mute. Sorry about that. Brother Agyei Hamilton, brother Jamal Bryant, who's a minister in the Black church in the state of Georgia, he called a fast or a boycott against Target because they said that they're going to roll back their DEI, meaning diversity, equity, and inclusion campaign that they were engaged in. And so he decided that they should boycott Target. So the question says, what is your opinion on that? Do you think that that was a good idea to say, hey, we're going to boycott Target for this reason, the DEI?
I think it's a good idea if you had enough of us to participate in something like that. But I mean, you said in what state it was done in one state?
Well, someone in one state called it, but it was nationwide.
Okay, and did it work?
It has been very effective. Yes, it's working. In fact, it worked so well that Target had reached out to the Black clergy and wanted to have a conversation with them. Brother Agyei, hold on one second. Brother Agyei, what is your opinion now that some of these ministers actually took some money that was offered to them by Target, I guess, to try to convince Black people to end the boycott? What is your opinion on these Black preachers taking the money?
Yeah, well, I believe that Target offered $75,000 to certain churches that were participating, and the churches, of course, are saying that's going to go to leadership training and scholarships and all this stuff. But Malcolm addressed this in his message to the grassroots when talking about civil rights leaders meeting with white philanthropists, supposedly to protest, but getting their money, and how that money changes the direction of their political movement. And he said, first thing that the white man does when he sees Black Negro leaders organizing, he invites the Negro leaders to coffee. And he said, them Negroes can't pass up the coffee. That's a metaphor. He's saying that they don't have the discipline to say, nah, we don't want your money. This is whatever our agenda items are. That's what we want. You're not going to buy us off. Now, from Target's point of view, brilliant, brilliant. Give them some money and shut them up, right? So I certainly do not support that. That money, I think Roland Martin has gone on record as saying that little $300,000 ain't going to put a dent in anything of importance in our community. So that's like that's a payoff. That's like a little shut up money. So I certainly don't support that.
Now, you had Al Sharpton, I'll say his name. He said, okay, well, we should boycott Target in favor of shopping at Costco. So you're going to boycott a white-owned business in favor of supporting another white-owned business. I would say if you're going to do that, you should boycott the white-owned business in favor of supporting the Black-owned business. What is your opinion on that?
Yeah, he may have had reasons that I don't know. He may be trying to play the white man against himself, which they do to us all the time. So I don't know if that's what he's doing. But these are just some of the complicated issues that we deal with when you're a colonized people, when you're a colony in somebody else's formation. You're constantly making these choices. If I work here, am I supporting the empire? if I buy this product, am I supporting the product? Hell yeah, you're supporting it. But there's no way to literally never support it when you're a colony. That's
Right.
the whole problem with being a colony. That's why some of our great Black Power organizations consistently fought against being under the governmental apparatus, if you will, of white folk. Because we're always from day to day going to have to make these very complicated, conflicting decisions because we're not in power, right? So, for instance,
And because we
I
don't
saw a
try to
documentary
put
that said,
ourselves in power, why aren't we talking about building our own Costco? Why are we talking about trading one for another? Why are we even talking about that? That's what I'm saying. If you listen to me when I talked earlier, we're the group that didn't want to sit on the white folks' toilets. We wanted our own toilets. That's what we got to go to now, brother. We can't keep talking about, how we're going to make them do what we want them to do. We got to do what we got to do. We got to figure it out some kind of way.
And I would say to that, it's not to make them do what we want them to do. It's for punish them for not doing the right thing in the first place. So I agree.
We haven't got time. We're being punished. Look at the black homeless straight across America, man.
But we just said the boycott is effective. So if it does work.
Well, it's effective for, you told me $300,000. That's not the drop in the, what is that to the problems we have?
That's nothing. I agree. That's absolutely nothing. But my thing is they should not have taken the money and they should have stayed, kept their foot on the gas and continue with the boycott and told them, we don't want your money.
They should have been trying to figure out how to establish our own Costco's, man.
Yeah, I agree.
When we get to that?
I agree with that 100%. Brother Agyei, you want to respond to that?
No, sir.
Okay. So either way, I don't know what the future of the boycott is going to be as it relates to Target. I did call that church and they said the boycott is still ongoing. I know Jamal Bryant had a problem with the fact that some of these leaders in the black church took the money. So, going forward, we will have to see how that.
That's nothing new, bro. That's nothing new. That Watts Prophets got a poem. That too ain't nothing new. That's been going on.
Yeah.
The churches, they got out of the fight a long time ago. They've been bought out or something. I don't know what happened to them.
That is true.
And they could be very, very profitable to the black community. They could start schools. They had some effective things going. Our greatest teachers came out of our churches and stuff, but the church has been nullified.
It has.
But the prophets are still around. They all over. They're you young guys. The way you're talking now, you're tomorrow. But as I say, everything that we're doing, everybody's trying to do the right thing, hopefully.
Yeah.
But we got to get our own, y'all.
I agree.
You got to stop, I'm 86, and how many years have I heard us talking about voting? And we're still sitting around here talking about it, man. It hasn't worked for us.
I agree.
We have to begin to do. You younger generation. You've got to do for yourself now. We can't depend on anyone. We have no friends.
Brother Amde, we're running out of time, but can I ask you to do a poem for me? I would like to hear the one about the computer, not the one that said Google told a lie. It's another one we talk about the internet and use of the computer. Can you do that for us?
Okay, bro. I hear people say each and every day that the internet will set modern man free like a dolphin in the sea. Now, that statement completely confused me. Since when, my friends, has a net set anything free? Now, my simplest I regret, but where's the freedom in a net? Fishermen make nets, spiders weave webs, both are traps. The spider knows all in his web. He Keeps it in sight day and night, wrapped real tight with a click and a bite. Is it online, inline, download, unload? Where's the freedom in a net? Stealth traps in your laps, net zero, hero, sky, tail, intel, DSL, email, tell. Processing your personal soulful info, no telling where it go. Only the net maker really know. Now, you used to be able to shred it, but now that's jive. The hard drive is always alive. Wrapped real tight with a click and a bite. Spider-Man can pull you up tonight. Free man freely hitting a net will one day experience regret because there's no freedom in a net. Fishermen control their nets. Spiders control their webs. Who, my friend, controls the World Wide Web you're in? What spider has you in its website? Wrapped real tight with a click and a bite.
If I wish I had an applause button, I would play that applause for you, brother. Dave, I'm gonna have to let you go because we're out of time, and brother Agyei wants to talk about his new ebook. I'm gonna call you back though, all right?
Anytime, bro.
All right, brother. Peace. All right, brother Agyei, we appreciate you being so patient. You just put out a new ebook called "Empower Yourself," and why did you write the ebook?
It's an ebook, so it's not like a traditional book. It's not like a whole lot of writing, but it's just to give people some tips for things they can do immediately to improve the quality of their lives, and also it promotes the work I do as an empowerment coach. Anybody wants to check it out, just go to Wukusu Coaching, and the website will come up.
And you say you have empowerment coaching beginning in the month of September. What can you tell us about that?
I'd rather not go into it a lot. I would say go to the Wukusu Coaching website. It's all laid out. That's why I won't waste nobody's time on the show talking about that. Just go right there, you see everything.
WukusuCoaching.com?
Wukusu Coaching. If
you
type that in, it'll come right up.
And you taught, and this is a subject that I hold in high regard. You talked about the importance of gratitude without getting too far into the book. What can you tell us about the importance of gratitude?
It's the opposite of the attitude of complaint. People that are always complaining attract more things for which to complain, and people who show gratitude attract more things for which they could be grateful. It also, there's studies that show that being grateful has health benefits. People sleep better, are more vibrant, and are more resilient when they're not complaining about every little thing under the sun, but are grateful. Jay-Z had a lyric. I wanted to tell God, why do I deserve this? Was afraid he would say that I deserved less. That's interesting. You complain about stuff, you're missing all the beauty right in front of you. You always notice people like, I wish I had that, what this person got, what they doing, and they're not looking at this. And guess what? Because they're not focusing on what they got, what they have may be taken from them. So it's a lot to gratitude.
Yeah. So what's that website again for people that want more information on that ebook?
Just type Wukusu Coaching, it'll come right up.
Okay, Wukusu Coaching, and then you also have Wukusu the book, and then you have any number of other books, a book on leadership, Truth for Our Youth. How can people get more information on those books?
I would say same thing, go right to Wukusu Coaching, or you can go to Linktree, type my name, Agyei Tyehimba, go to Linktree, that has all the major links, because the Wukusu Coaching website is mostly focused around the books on empowerment. So I wrote 6 books, but all of them aren't necessarily about empowerment. So to see all of, or you can go to Amazon, just type my name in Amazon.com.
Okay.
And you'll see all the books.
So Agyei Tyehimba on Amazon or WukusuCoaching.com. Am I saying it right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Wukusu,
people,
wake up, clean up, stand up.
And you want that new empowerment, empower yourself ebook, because it's really good. It's a short read, but it's very dense with information. So, brother Agyei, I want to thank you for joining us again as always, brother. And I will definitely be calling on you again in a few weeks, man. Thank you for being here, bro.
Peace.
All right, peace, brother.